First of all, thanks for coming, and this is a lot of pressure. I didn't expect very many people will show up so I can say whatever I want. Now I'm in trouble, actually. First of all, thanks for coming, okay? And somebody wanted to introduce me. I thought I will introduce myself. I'm Prabhakar Clement. Most of you know, would have taken my classes. I teach in the civil engineering. I work on water-related problems, okay? So with that introduction, let me get my talk started. And before I do that, I thought since it's a kind of a serious talk, I thought I'll start with something funny to discuss about perspective, how we think about problems, okay? So this is a story about two guys. Let's call him Jake and John, okay? And Jake is a farmer. John is a physicist. He's a Ph.D. physicist. And they always hung around. And Jake one day invited, hey, why don't you come to my farm? Let's tent and have some fun and talk about different things. And John finally found some time, and they both went to his farm, played around, fished, and then eventually said, okay, it's too late, let's go to bed. And they pitched a tent, and he warned it could be pretty cold. But he said, that's fine. So they pitched a tent and started sleeping. Couple of hours later, suddenly, Jake gets up and said, John, get up. John, get up. And John finally gets up and said, Jake asked him, John, what do you see? And John looks at it and said, I see the heavens, Milky Way galaxy. I see the Saturn. I remember Galileo working on those Saturn rings. It's beautiful. And he turned around. And Jake goes, stop it. And he asked Jake, what do you see? John, we are in trouble. Somebody stole our tent. I tell this half jokingly because sometimes in life we do lose the perspective. There are perspectives in life. Sometimes we might lose a big picture. Okay? So I'm going to take a few minutes, next 20, 25 minutes, basically to let you kind of walk through a perspective which you may not have thought through, actually. Okay? So now, granted, I have no solutions. Okay? My goal here is to kind of make you think about this problem. Okay? So with that, before I get started, let me also acknowledge that none of these are my ideas. These are basically ideas derived from these 4 wonderful books. So if you have a phone, if you want to read something, take a picture of this. They are all outstanding. And more importantly, I know you guys are water people. They are all mathematicians. Okay? The first guy, Robert Frank, teaches in Cornell, and he's a mathematician. He talks about management science and things like that. The second guy, Malcolm Gladwell, is given by Dr. Terry to me. He's another mathematician from Waterloo, actually. And the third guy, Arthur Brooks, is another mathematician, teaches at Harvard, actually. And the last but not the least, Manjit is basically a physicist. He talks about people in physics. So all the ideas are essentially my perception of what they say. If you see something brilliant, it probably came from them. If you see something silly, it's my idea. Okay? So with that, how am I qualified to talk about these things? You would say, well, what have you done in your life? Well, I'm going to make a case that I'm the smartest guy in this room. Okay, trust me. Okay, so let me give a laundry list of accomplishment, right, to make a case that I'm the best. Okay, that is absolutely. I'm so big, really, really big. Okay, so to start with, I got 15 PhD students graduated. For those of you who are trying to graduate students, you know it's not trivial. Okay, even to get one out of your payroll is very difficult. So the way in which we look at a PhD student is, I got 15 PhD students out of my payroll. That is not trivial, actually. Okay, and they have helped me write a ton of papers, 120 papers to be. The best fun fact is, my students then went on to publish a lot of papers, 300 papers literally. I put a star there. I'll come back to it, why there is a star down the line. But that's the truth. That's a real number. So I would say I'm kind of qualified. I'm a hardworking guy. Now I'm going to make a case I'm also a smart guy. Okay, super smart. So here are some examples. Here's a case. I worked with 2 of my graduate students. Maria was here. Yuling was from Auburn. And then Fawn was also from Auburn. We would go there, collect samples, and then we will come back and make all kinds of chromatographic work and create a knowledge about oil spill. This is what we worked on. I worked on that for almost 10 years and worked with these guys to create knowledge. My core area is groundwater, and I primarily work with physical models. And here are a couple of examples looking at saltwater intrusion and making my graduate student climb up and violating all kinds of safety concerns, I would think. Thankfully, she's graduated and gone, so she won't sue me. And then we also look at groundwater plumes, and we would look at this problem in detail and do quite a bit of work, actually, on this area. And as I said, some of my students have gone on to do very well. Here's one of my students who teaches at University of Memphis, just now won a career award, which I have never won. So he is smart. So he is smart, I'm smart. Think about it, how smart we are as a group. Okay? We are really, really smart. Okay? And here are a bunch of smart people I'm working right now, and they make me look even smarter. Nimisha is working on she's actually writing against Supreme Court, saying that Supreme Court has no idea what they are talking about. And she just published 2 papers on that. And Bayan and Banu are here. They work on a physical laboratory to look at soils, how water moves through soil. And Fatima is working on recharge. She's somewhere here. Eniola is working on base flow. And then Mahalet and Masood are working on PFAS, which is a very important contaminant. So these are the kind of work we do. More importantly, these are smart students. Okay? So think about it. You get so many smart kids, and then I'm really smart, of course. So we are super smart, right? We're absolutely super smart. So what happens? So here's my hypothesis, working hypothesis to start with. Successful people are simply talented folks. They work hard, as I do. And let me give you some evidence. Bill Gates is one of them. He kind of, in his early days, he would put like 12 to 24 hours. He would just work like crazy, actually. And his IQ, look at it, 160. Clearly a smart guy. And what about all of you guys? I mean, you guys got this huge GRE scores, and you work in the lab, you work on machine learning, really, really smart ideas. Of course you're smart, right? And look at me. I already made a case. I worked hard, and I'm Mr. Smart, and used my talent and intelligence to get many things done, okay? So I deserve it. I'm really, really good. No question about it, right? So what do I get for that? Well, you get these beautiful things. And recently, I was lucky to, I won one of those awards. They do a little ceremony on this, and to make sure that I am Mr. Smart. There is no question about it. All the rewards are mine. I worked hard. I worked hard for it. My students worked hard. Actually, I work harder than my students. So that's why I get all these rewards. So I am great, right? Now, let me pause a little bit. Obviously, this is a version, and I can even build on this, obviously, right? If I go back, and I can say that I never really spoke English until age 15. I learned in a language called Tamil, which is a very old language, and we are very, very possessive about it. So we learned everything up to age 15 in that language. So look at me. Why did I accomplish all this? It's all hard work. It's all my talent. That's why I did it, right? Well, let's pause and think about it. Perhaps, it's just a version 1. Is there a version 2 to this story, right? So let's look at it, okay? The honest truth is, are these accomplishments I just outlined, are they all just my talent and hard work? Did luck play any role? Let's ask this philosophical question, right? If I think about it, if you had a couple of beer and thought about it, the honest answer is yes. Okay? So I'm going to give you a few anecdotal reasonings for my own life, and then I'll talk about other people, okay? And say, how does luck work? Is it really true? Okay? Let me start with the first one, which is I consider most important one. This was probably 30 years ago. This is a picture of a commuter train in Bombay, city of Bombay, which is basically 20 million people in the size of Tuscaloosa area, okay? And I had to take this commuter train to go to work. That was my first job. And one day, I was just going there. You see those guys hanging around? I was one of those guys. I came late. I hung around. Now, we all gone through near-death experiences. What I went through there was a near-death experience in a slow motion. Okay? So you're hanging on this thing. What happens is, trust me, first thing you do is your hand will start shaking. And then your mind will start telling stories. So I'm actually hanging around and thinking, what are the options? If I fall down, I can jump out, I might break a leg. Or if I completely lose control, I die. And on that computer train, at least on those days, now things have changed, at least 10 people die every day. So I would see these things every day. Okay? So I'm imagining what's going to happen to me, right? And that makes your hand shake even more. And then comes some magic hand from the big group, yells, "Oh, idiot, come in." And who pulled it? I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. Okay? And these are they're all busy. They're all going somewhere. And out of the blue, somebody pulls me in, and then I was safe, got out of it. I never met that person. Okay? So the way in which I look at it is, and that always resonates in my life, so the way in which I look at it is, life itself is a luck. Okay? And all of us can think about it, actually. Okay? I'm sure all of us have a story to tell, too. Let me give you the second. That's my first luck. The second one is the mentors. We underestimate mentors. Okay? So I started my life as a physicist, and I went to this college called American College. Okay? It's not the big one, but few people recommended got there. And the motto of this college is purificatus non conceptus. It's a Latin word, meaning purified, not consumed. Trust me, so it was a 2-year program, and they beat the crap out of us to purify us. Okay? And the guy who did was that guy. I met him. He was 90 years old. On his 90th birthday, he lived in Tennessee, so I went and met with him. God bless his soul, he passed away. This guy was a missionary who came from America. Okay? And he built this program. And the very first week I was in the program, he would use this old multimeters, and we are supposed to fix it. So he would give the old multimeter, and I was a young, brash kid, and said, why the heck is dumping this old thing? Okay, let me try that. So you would take a multimeter and find out where the resistor is broke, and he would physically came back and slapped my head. Okay, brushed it. And I asked him, what the heck? Idiot, smell it. He said, how are you going to take all these resistors? Smell it. If it's burnt, you can smell it. And then you focus on the area, you can find the resistor. First lesson I learned, always have a rule of thumb. Always have a back of the envelope calculations. Okay? And he is a guy who trained me. He's a guy who trained many people. And that time I thought, this guy must be a plumber in America, came there to torture me. Honestly, I thought that. It turned out he was a Johns Hopkins physicist, worked for Bell Labs, and for whatever reason, he went to church one day, and somebody said there is a mission opportunity in India. He gave up everything, came back to India, and he worked with some top scientists like Raman, on Raman effect. He's written papers on that. And I didn't know that time, actually. Bumping up across him, absolute luck. Then came, so that's the first guy. Then came the second crazy guy. This is an institution called IIT Madras, Bombay, which is arguably the #1 school in India. My junior juicer is right here, actually. So we both worked for this guy. He's crazy. He would stay with us until 12 o'clock in the night, coding on Visual Basic. This was in the 80s. Okay? And we had access to some of the best computers back in the 80s, actually, right? And then he passed me along to the next guy, which is R.C. Valla. He was a Harvard grad, came back to India, started a wastewater industry. Okay? And he was the guy I first worked for. He would take me in his office to train me, actually. I had no idea about wastewater treatment. And he drove a Benz those days, and he would take me in the Mercedes-Benz, And he introduced me a book called Biological Process Design and Wastewater by Benefield and Randall. And lo and behold, I wrote to Benefield, who was in Auburn. And those days, you find universities not by Googling. There is no Google, right? You go to the consulate, US consulate, to find a place. That's how I found, and wrote to Larry. Larry is the guy who wrote back to me, gave me an offer, okay, and became a student. And 2 years later, Larry became a dean of Auburn, and he passed me along to this guy, Fred, who is now in Clemson. And he has written a book in the 60s on groundwater. So I learned from him. Completely an accident. Every little step was totally random, actually. Okay, you could have. So, and I'm sure all of us would have, but I'm absolutely lucky, guys. There's no question about it. Now, the last one is opportunities. So my first teaching position was in Australia, in a very nice program. I go there, and I had no idea. I was working in a lab for 6 years. I have no idea how the whole thing works. The trick to faculty position is you hire good kids, good students, PhD students, and then you do nothing. And then claim all their work is yours, problem solved, right? I had no idea about that. So I went there saying that I'm the smartest man, I can do everything. Then walks this guy, Sivapalan, who was a Horton Medal winner, actually, now. He was an associate professor at that time. He said, "Are you an idiot? You need a student." I said, "Why?" "Well, he can't do anything." And then he said, "Well, York, who was actually a National Academy member, he was my department chair, just recruited a student and he gave it to me. And he was a fully funded student. You need to poach him from me because I can't send him to you." So that's Matt, the bald guy there. So he was my first student. I went and met with him. I convinced him to get in there. And the rest is history. I published the first 5 papers with him. You can say 248, 247, 244. The rest, 243, are his. Okay? He's a completely well-accomplished guy, way better than me. So at that time, after 5 years, I thought, how smart I am. Look, I created Matt. He won an outstanding dissertation award and all that stuff. But it turned out he published 200 plus papers when I published probably 50 plus papers during the same time. So I make my CV look good because I take his 248, add it to all my other student publication, and he looks very good. That's why the 300 came, out of which 248 is his, actually. Okay. Now, how did I get him? Completely random, actually. And without him, there is no way I would have started my teaching career, period, right? So let's look at a bigger picture. I want to make a case that our life is a series of random lucky events. That's it, basically. And who are your parents make a huge difference. And where were you born, at what time, they all play a huge role. Just think about it. There exists a person exactly like you and me right now in perhaps Syria or Palestine. They're probably smarter than us, right? They have no opportunity. Absolutely no opportunity, right? Or some poor kid in slums of Indonesia or somewhere else, or Africa. They just don't have an opportunity, right? So how do you get these things? Luck, basically, right? You end up in a family, you end up at the right place. Let's go back to the beginning of life, for example. Here's a picture I took from one of the documentaries. It's really interesting, and it really made me think about it. So if you look at the conception, you got the ovum, and you got the sperms fighting for it. First of all, a chance of you being as you, which is male or female, is 1 in a million, 1 in 100 million, right? Even then, the fascinating thing was, these are all recent. I actually read a paper on it. The vein, there is something called polysperm fertilization, which is terrible. If there are 2 sperms enter in, the entire ovum gets messed up, actually, right? So what happens is the difference between the winning sperm and the other one is literally seconds. And when it enters, it immediately triggers an electromagnetic signal and closes the outer loop. And so the next guy cannot enter in. Okay? So you basically were created by like few seconds, essentially. Otherwise, you would have been a boy or a girl, or vice versa. So your conception itself is fairly random. Okay? Now, Your birth time. This is a interesting study which was done in Canada. What they did was they tried to document how successful hockey players are. These are ice hockey players, right? And they found a very interesting statistic. They found of the major leagues people, these are NBA, NFL type people, it's very clear that 40% of them are all born in the fourth quarter, which is basically sometime in January, close to December, November, like that, birth date. And about 10% are born in basically earlier, like January. Other way around, sorry. 40% are born in January, March, that time frame, and then 10% are born in the late this thing. So what they documented is, this is very clear actually, purely. So the bottom line is, if you are born sometime in January, February, March, April, and taken up ice hockey, you have a better chance to become a professional player than a November baby. Pure, numbers shows that statistically. Then the question is why? The reason why was, the way in which the Canadian hockey system works is, they have a cutoff of January. So basically, when they have a cutoff of January of 5-year-old kids, the kids who are born in January are slightly bigger and taller, right? So they get a small advantage, right? And that keeps rolling. So once you get in, then you get to the next league. Then you get into the next league. And that gets accumulated, okay? So your birth date in certain professions can make a difference, okay? How do you end up a certain birth date? Random. This is somebody tabulated the world record. Okay? There are 8 world records here, which include Usain Bolt and Mike Powell, all these great people. It turned out 7 out of 8 people on that particular day had a win behind them. Okay? Small made a difference. World record versus no world record, right? There was win behind them. So they had some help, basically. Finally, I want to look at one case, little detail, which is, I like this guy, Max Planck, who went on to win a Nobel Prize. He's a very well-known guy. There are many Nobel Prizes, but he's a seminal because he changed the paradigm. It used to be continuum mechanics, and he created the quantum mechanics. Completely different paradigm. And quantum mechanics led to transistors revolution, computers, et cetera, right? So this is the physicist actually tracks his life. Max Planck was born in 1858, and both his parents were, his paternal as well as maternal parents were theologians, which is basically those days, those are the academics actually. And his father himself was a professor, law professor at Munich University. So he was born into a nice academic family. Here is his basic training. He never wanted to study science. He wanted to be a musician. But he was a terrible piano player, apparently, according to his dad. Okay? So he has to quit. So he quit. And as a second choice, he ended up taking physics. Okay? And where did he go to school? His dad's school. Okay? So he went to his dad's school as a physicist, and he spent there for about 3 years. And then he was thinking, what should I do? And he talked to some other people over there, and they said, well, my son, there was nothing important left to discover in physics. This is late 18th century. Okay? That was from his mentor, basically. So he gets fed up, he took a break, and went to another program in Berlin, which is a big program, and where he get a chance to meet these 2 guys, Helmholtz and Kirchhoff and Clausius. You guys sort of seen them all these are big guys, basically. He just meets them, and then hangs around, doesn't know what to do. Then he says, okay, let me do PhD for fun. So he does a PhD. Okay? And his PhD topic was on thermal irreversibility. And when he finished his thesis, everybody thought his thesis was so uninteresting, and his mentor was Helmholtz. He never even read it. Okay? And Kirchhoff was the other guy, committee member. He read it, but he completely disagreed whatever in the thesis. Okay? And then Clausius was his kind of a real intellectual mentor, so he was really disappointed. He sends his thesis to him. He never replies, basically. So he was absolutely disappointed. And he could not find a job, so he said, okay, I will teach. Okay, I will teach for nothing, basically. He started his teaching position as a service, and he did that for 5 years. Okay. And then he gets a first break. There was a position in Kiel, which is a much smaller university, and he gets the assistant professor position. And Planck himself admits that highly likely he got it because the department chair was his good friend of his dad. Okay, he ends up with that. And while he was there, there was a competition, and he submitted an interesting paper, basically, an essay. In that essay, he cites Helmholtz. So citing others sometimes helpful. And he cites Helmholtz, who was a big guy. And he had a controversial theory. He cites him. And Helmholtz finds out and said, oh, wow, that's nice. And there was a position opens up, and Helmholtz goes and hires him. Helmholtz was the big guy there. And the only reason he got hired was the other two guys, they tried to make him an offer, turned it down. So they said, okay, we'll give it to this guy. So that's how Planck got his major break to get into a R1 university, the major university, right? And once he gets there, within 4 years, Helmholtz suddenly dies. And his deputy also dies in the span of 2 years, back to back. And the whole center panics. There's nobody to lead. And they asked Planck, would you lead? Would you take over? And he took over in a place where he produced a thesis which nobody read 10 years ago. Think about that. Okay? And now that he has a control on this, he was a theoretician. Now that he has control on the entire lab, he has absolute access to the experimentalist. He was not an experimentalist. And there's one fellow named Wien. You probably would have seen Wien's law. He is an experimentalist and a modeler. So he had this Wien's distribution, which basically says if you heat a material, it emits certain wavelengths. So if it's very cold, you get a red wave. If it's very hot, it'll be a blue wave. So that's why when you have an oven burning, a blue flame means it's burning at a higher temperature. So that distribution was created by Wien, and you can see there is a bit of a missing here. It was not following properly. And Planck found, and he had a ton of experimental data, so Planck found an analytical function which he could fit it, actually. Okay? And that's Planck distribution. And then when he submitted the paper, it got rejected because there is not much explanation. So he made up that function can be created as a superposition of a bunch of oscillators, we call quantum oscillators. Okay? So he created the mathematics to fit it, essentially, right? And when he submitted the paper got accepted, but Planck himself never believed in it. It's a completely theoretical framework. Okay? Lo and behold, this is early 19th, we're end of the 18th century, comes Einstein. By the way, do you know what Einstein got his Nobel Prize for? Anybody? It's not relativity. It's for photoelectric effect. So Einstein postulates photoelectric effect and validates what's going on. And then comes an American physicist, Compton, who actually says things are quantized. Okay? And that validates his theory. And eventually, Planck received the 1980 Nobel Prize for Physics for a theory which he never believed in to start with. Okay? And not only that, that led to the paradigm shift. Because originally, Planck never even believed in atoms. Remember, Rutherford atom model was 1904. So when Planck was growing up, there was no atom. So he never even believed in atom. But then he created this theory which led way to quantum mechanics, essentially. Okay? So luck can act in many ways. So now let's look at another simple problem, which is role of luck in the art world. I have 3 pictures there. Which one you guys can identify? The middle one, right? By the way, all 3 came from the same Renaissance period. And the first 2 was from the same guy. You know who is that? Da Vinci. Okay? And the critics would say the first one is even more complicated. And which one do you think is really pretty and nice? Anybody? Probably the third one, right? Yeah, that would be, and that author, we don't even know who it is. It's a woman, we know that much, but the name is not very well recognized at all, actually, and she is a same-time author. Now, you might wonder, how did the Mona Lisa become so famous? And my wife and I went to France long time ago, so we have to fight all this and go and see Mona Lisa, right? Mona Lisa is this tiny, I mean, I have zero appreciation for art, right? So I accept it. So it's a tiny little picture, and everybody's, I said, in America, I've seen a bigger Mona Lisa. It's truth, I have, right? So the question then is, what is in it? What is the critic? Believe it or not, Mona Lisa was never popular until 1901. What happened was there was a theft, and somebody stole Mona Lisa, this art, and exactly the same time, there is a color printing revolution. So every paper carried Mona Lisa picture on the paper saying that it's lost. So it's a big news that time. Okay? Now, not only that, it remained in the news for almost 4 years, and they actually caught a very colorful thief. And it became a news again after 4 years. Okay? And that's how it became popular. Okay? It has absolutely no basis in terms of any kind of artistic ideas. And maybe there is some. But the real popularity is because printing press. Color printing press, basically. Okay? So the luck can be a function of what happens to you, right? Now, the role of luck in getting some rewards. This is an interesting experiment this guy did, Robert Frank, the Cornell guy did. What he did was, let me check the time to make sure. I want to leave plenty of time. Okay, I got time. Okay, so he did a very interesting experiment. He took a group of 3 people and put them in a little cell. 3 people, 3 people, 3 people, right? And asked them to reflect on some philosophical topic, nothing to do with their expertise or anything like that, totally different. And then suddenly, the organizer would get in and say, hey, wait a minute, you are the lead, okay, and walked away. That's it. How was the lead picked? Totally random. This guy will walk in and say, you are the lead, walked away. And then they let them discuss for a while, all these little cubicles. This is all done with replication and statistics, right? And then after an hour, she would take 4 cookies. There were 3 people, 4 cookies. And take the 4 cookies to the room and give it to them. And then she walked away, and the cameras are following. So each one took a cookie, and there's 1 extra cookie. Whom do you think got the cookie? The leader. Who gave the cookie to the leader? The other 2 people, most of the time. You are the leader, take it. So the rewards go to people sometimes when you get that position purely by luck sometimes. And this is very well documented, okay? So the question is, well, we all kind of know luck. I mean, if you had a couple of beer and thought about it, everybody would acknowledge this, I would say, right? So we kind of feel it, but we still don't recognize it. Why? Okay? Well, don't blame yourself because it's your DNA. There is a bias in a human system where we all tend to overestimate our own contribution and tend to underestimate others in a shared work environment. That's just our bias. A great example is household work. Okay? I can tell you every Saturday, my wife is a dust. She hates dust, basically, right? She walks with this fluffy thing and dust around. But I get to do the vacuuming. So my theory is I do everything. Hopefully she's not listening, right? We all do that. Every couple you go and ask them, one of them will say, I do everything, she doesn't do anything. And she will say, I'll do everything, he doesn't do anything. Okay? Why? We have this inherent bias. Okay? Where I was involved is this authorship. I've written on that. So if you're interested, you should definitely read some of my papers. Over the years, I had to deal with all kinds of problems with students. Who is the first author, who is the second author, right? So once what I did was I had a big group. I said, okay, go and tell me, it's 1 pi, right, 100%. Go and tell me how much you want. I never told the other guy that I'm going to ask this question. Okay. My group actually, when I added it all up, we had 240%, 240. And I was not even included. Okay, so I should get like minus 140. And people have done other places, surveys, and it's always 140%. If you did, you take a random paper, individually ask them how much you should deserve, it will always be close to 140, minimum. Okay? So why? Are we selfish? No. We do have a bias. It's hard for us to realize the contributions of others in a group environment. Okay? So this is part of our DNA, if you will. Okay? So if that's the case, then so what's the secret? You might. I asked a question, right? I'm going to give you the secret, which I'm going to. So what's the secret? Is it all just like luck? Can I just give it up? Okay. Hold on. There's one more slide. I'll give you my secret. Before I do that, I'll tell the last story, which is a golfing story. And I'm a terrible golfer. I can tell you that. Okay. So this is another statistical experiment. What they did was they took a bunch of golfers. These are pretty good golfers, not pros, but very good golfers. And then they divide them into 2 groups. Let's say there were 200 people, 100 in one group, 100 in another group. The 100 people went to a golf course. They said, here is a magical golf course which Tiger Woods used or some big guy used. It's just a fantastic golf club. If you use that putter, you will kill it. Okay? Go and putt. They did the experiment with 100 people. Other 100 people, they sent it to another golf course and said, just go there are a bunch of putters, pick one of your choice and do it. So they took the statistics of it and they found the person who used the magic golf, that group which used the magic golf, always won. Statistically, they are different. Okay? And we know that the truth is, that is not even a magic putter. It's exactly the same putter they just threw in the other building. They randomly picked one and made up a story that it's a magic putter. Okay? So here lies the answer to the success story, right? So if you go back and ask the first question, what is the secret of success? Of course, it's top secret. Don't tell anyone. Okay? So this is based on David Brooke. Anybody has read David Brooke in New York Times? Okay. Fantastic writer, right? So this is totally his idea. I kind of took it and put it in my words. His idea, his suggestion is, the first one is, to become a successful person, one must be, first of all, ambitious and blindly believe in the mantra that our hard work and talent alone deserve credit for all our accomplishment, and luck has absolutely no role to play. Okay? It is kind of depressing a little bit, right? After all this talk. But you have to. Okay? Now, I underlined the words there, right? Blindly believe. Okay? So here comes a corollary. The second, to become an evolved human being, if you want to be a human being, okay, one must realize. Remember, one is a belief. The other one is the realization, which takes more time, more thinking. That the belief is mostly nonsense. Okay? And luck always played a major role. Okay? Now, this is a conflicting solution or paradoxical solution. And we do this all the time in life sometimes, right? So you have to act as if it's all you. Okay? And the hope is, as you evolve, you would realize, and then the last thing is, one must always be aware of their obligation to use their luck-aided prosperity or luck-aided success to help those who are unlucky, because there are plenty left behind. When you go ahead, there are plenty left behind. Okay? So that's the secret of success. Okay? You have to work hard. You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your ideas. But keep in mind, in the end, there is something else going on. Okay? Now, my point of view is, here's my summary, here's my concluding remark. It actually comes from, I'm sure all of you have seen this movie, It's a Wonderful Life. Anybody who has not seen the movie should. It's there all the time during Christmas time, okay? And so there is a nice exchange between Clarence and George. And Clarence is this angel character, right? And Clarence says, strange, I mean, George wants to kill himself, for those of you who have seen the movie. Clarence says, strange, isn't it? Each man's life touches so many other lives. When he isn't around, he leaves an awful hole. That's a fact, okay? So life, as I see it, is this complex network of people and ideas which you have no control over it. That's a reality, okay? Now, you have to acknowledge that. Now, in my own case, if I were to summarize something, there is no question it's been a wonderful life. There is no question about it, okay? Now, there is also no question I've done something, okay? It's not that I've done nothing, but certainly not the whole thing. I don't really deserve the many things, okay? The outcomes, if I look at it in my own little life, right, they're way bigger than my efforts. There's no question about it, okay? But all said and done, all I can say is it's been a wonderful life.